Yay, sounds good. I just want to make a couple of remarks before we move on to our wonderful interview with our local natives. I did tell you, everybody, that there's decaf coffee and homemade cookies that I just made this afternoon. So if you get a chance, or if you want to just take a little walk, go up and have some. Second, I want to show you something that has been donated to us. This is the coolest thing. It's called an Aeolian piano player.
Wow.
And Marcia and I just went to Longwood Gardens, and Aeolian is the name of the organ that's at Longwood Gardens. So it's a famous brand, I guess, back in the turn of the century, last century, a century ago. Anyway, it has been donated to us. It has over 100 discs, which I don't think you call them discs, but they fit into this space right here. And then you can play 100 different songs with it. And there is a little story that goes with it that I won't tell you completely, but it wasn't working when the family that's donated it to us got it. So their 14-year-old daughter read up on it, and she did all she could to make it work, and she made it work. And then at the end of the story, it says, "I'm also happy to report that my daughter is now a civil engineer." So I'm going to be talking about this only because we have half the money that we need to get it. So if anybody's interested in helping us with that, I have a jar up here, and you can put some money in. That would be wonderful. Second, actually that was second. We will start our conversation with our honored guests in a few minutes. I'm honored to introduce Bob Herrington. A longtime resident of Ocean View, related to 3/4 of the people that are in this room, as am I, and as graduate of Lord Baltimore High School, well, except you said it was actually Indian River High School, and the former owner of a mortuary. He has graciously organized this event, and I'm certain you will really enjoy it. I have one more announcement that I'll make now, and then I turn the program over to Bob. On March 19th, Tyler Dryblatt from the Indian River Life Saving Station will be our speaker. And he will be talking about how the Life Saving Station started, how they operated, and he'll tell some stories. So I think it'll be real interesting, and that's on March 19th, again, a Wednesday at 7 o'clock. So keep that in mind too. All right, Bob.
Good evening, everyone. I decided to dress sort of the way my grandfathers would have dressed at the turn of the century, just to get a little feel of we're going to move back in time tonight. This hat came from Jack Hill's store. It's over 80 years old, and that store was down here near the canal, going on the left. So that's an old artifact. This pocket watch was my great-great-grandfather Nathaniel Long's. It goes back to the 1800s. My grandfather Ike Long gave it to me in 1955 when I was a baby crawling on the floor to teethe on it. Wow. My father said, "Wow, that thing is too nice for a baby to be chawing on it and leaving teeth marks." So he sent it away and had it rebuilt. And it belonged to Nathaniel Long, then to Isaac Long, then to my father, Robert, and then when he died in 1969, I inherited it. It has service marks by jewelers with dates in the 1800s in it. I'm also carrying a change purse, as men used to carry. All the money in it is 1930s money. This belongs to Hosea Madera, who is the maternal grandfather of Bernice and Yvonne. Now, years ago, somebody came and said, "Man, Bob, you know stuff." Well, it's only because I listened to some very magnificent people in my family telling stories. I had the privilege to grow up close to Ike Long and Anna Long, my grandparents, and they were right there at the foundation of the chicken business when Cecil got too many chickens, and she's going, "Ike, you gotta help me." In by the sea and in a neat little old town Ocean View was might as well have been the 1800s or the 1920s up until then, because when they were kids, there was no police department here. We only have an elected constable.
Yeah.
And he could only enforce the town ordinances. So rather than me blather on, because I take no credit for any of the stuff I'm telling, I just learned it from listening. So tonight we have Bernice Long Murray, if she did get married, to her sister here married a Murray. I'm going to let them tell all that story because that's fascinating. Bruce was one of my mother thought she had to look out for and protect Bruce. She kidnapped him once because she thought his father was going to spank him, so she grabbed him and ran off with him when he was a kid. And then Lois, her father ran a hardware store, and I'm going to quit talking for the rest of the night, other than if the conversation lulls, I'll just remind them or say what. But the first thing we're going to talk about is being a 10-year-old in Ocean View. And I'm just going to hand the microphone down, and each of them can tell the things they remember from when they were a little one up to 10, and who their parents were, and their neighbors were, and what it was like, and what their homes were like. So here we go.
Do I have to use a mic?
Well, but I do know, you're like me, you have a booming voice.
Yes, if you can't hear me, let me know, but otherwise I'd rather not use the mic. Is that all right, Bob?
No, you have to make sure the folks in the back row are okay with that.
All right.
Because it's easy to hold it up there.
Well, I can remember that, I don't know if any of you remember where the little post office was here on Central Avenue. Well, that home is where I was born. And then 2 doors down from that, or let me see, was it 3, 1, 2, 3, is the home that my dad bought. And then that's where I continued to live until I got married. And that's about all that I remember of that, except my Bob's grandparents lived across in the field right behind me, across the road on Woodland. And one day they took me over to my Aunt Anna and Uncle Isaac's house. Just thought I went to visit. Well, when I came back home, this little baby was laying in the bed with my mama. That's the reason I had to go visit. So, and then I remember that of her and taking care of her. And when she was a baby, she got pneumonia, was very, very sick. And we didn't want to put her in the hospital. So they did everything to keep her home. And as you can see, she made it. And then I continued to grow, and of course we played together and had our neighbors, and we just always had a good time. We made up our own games and things to play, you know, so. You want to talk a little bit more?
Well, Yvonne can talk more than a little bit. They say I take a little bit after that trait of being able to talk my legs off an iron pot.
Well, before I go into my story, I want to say how thankful I am that I am a resident of Ocean View, part of Jonathan and Lizzie Long's family. We had a good life together, and Bernice and I talk every night on the phone for an hour or more, and sometimes my phone starts to die, and I say, hold on, I gotta go get another phone. But where I was born, the house is still there, 32 Central Avenue, and we had a good time. We played hopscotch, we played dress up, we played doll babies and paper dolls and all of that. I had a wonderful next door neighbor, Connie, and Mitchell. She was my best friend, Willis Mitchell's daughter. And What else do I remember?
Well, you were talking about paper dolls, and if we didn't have a new book of paper dolls, we'd get the Sears catalog out and cut us out some paper dolls. And dress them up.
We had a lot of fun playing cards, and Dad and Mom took us a lot to different places. We went to Selbyville. There was a theater in Selbyville at one time, and we went there. Actually, we were there the night it caught on fire. And we just really had a wonderful life. We were not rich, but we never wanted for anything. We had wonderful parents, Horace and Dorothy Long, and some of the pictures will show that they grew zinnias on Central Avenue. And just made a little business out of it. Dad would cut 20 flowers in a bunch and sell them for $1.25. And one year my sister got a guest book and we had people sign from, and it was almost every state in the United States that people would stop on their way to Bethany Beach to buy the flowers.
Lois, if you can tell us a little bit about your childhood and I'll add, her father was the first person that introduced me to foreign accents because I was just a Sussex County boy and her dad was from Massachusetts. I thought I was learning like how they talk in foreign countries. Hand her the mic, because I think you'll need it.
I did, but she didn't want it.
Oh. Can you hear Lois okay back there in the back?
I would say we
You're going to need to
had a
use the mic.
very good childhood. We did fun things, we played with each other, and one of the things that I remember, they had a big hickory tree by the Presbyterian church. So I would sit out there, take my hammer and crack those hickory nuts, and we'd eat those. But we had a lot of fun. The Murrays lived in back of us. They had a daughter Betty and Becky, and
Hold the mic up there so they can hear
we
you.
just didn't have to look for fun. We made our fun, we made our friends, and some of them are still friends, you know, that we've had over the years. So growing up in Ocean View was a blessing.
Now, when I was a kid, I caught into the tail end of hog killing day, which a lot of you would be horrified if you had to do. And I would like Bruce to tell what went on at Ray and my grandfather's on hog killing day.
Well, hog killing day was a special day to me. I liked it a lot, and you got up early in the morning, and well, the day before you get ready, get your pots all set up, and get the wood all around them to heat the water. You bury another barrel down in front of the barn, sort of on an angle. You put that water that you boil in there to soften the hair, so you could get the hair off the hog. And then you get his hair off and all that, then you cut him up, hang him up in front of the barn, and cut him up, and get all the hand, the shoulders, the ribs, all that.
They can't hear you, Bruce. Can you hold the mic up there?
Get all that stuff out. And that was, let's see where I'm at. Yeah, we had the hog killing pot, the scald in it, or the scald, heat the water to scald the hog in it. And you had to get the hair off of it. And then you hung the hog and split him down the stomach, gutted him, and took the halves off, put on the table, got the shoulders, all the parts out of it. And you preserved it however you wanted. You could sugar cure it, or you could smoke it, do whatever you wanted to do with it, or you could eat it by doing either one. But most people would sugar cure it or smoke it. And, I don't know.
All your parts and pieces in the hog killing pot.
Oh, yeah, all your parts and pieces. Oh, you might call it scraps.
To make
That's
scrap.
where scrap is from.
That's how Scrapple
Going
was
that
born.
way. The sausage comes out of the trimmings the good red meat. So you got your sausage and it's definitely color.
I just want to hand it back to.
Take it back here.
I,
Yeah.
I,
Here you go.
no,
Well, I'm gonna hold it up here so they can hear you.
I wanted to say that the historical house here, my friend Hilda McGee, now Shao, lived in that home. In fact, I think all the McGee family at different times lived in that house. And where the park is now, there was a little pavilion back then, and every summer we had a homecoming there. People would come, and they would have homemade ice cream and some sodas to sell and things, and speakers, you know, and then when nothing was going on, we would play over there, my sister and I and my friend Hilda and other ones. We would take a piece of a limb and break the shats all up and form a house like, and then find some logs to sit on and play there, you know. And then like Bob said, right across the road of living there. So I was so close to all of this all the time. And the West house that was there, I used to babysit for someone that I don't remember the family now in that house.
Bernice just said a Sussex County word. Do any of you know what shats are? Pine needles, they're called pine shats to us.
After I said that, I thought
Well, I didn't want him to think you were talking about manure or something.
I thought I needed to correct that.
Yeah. Well, a transitional thing that happened in the 1960s, which I'm going to turn this to Yvonne in a minute, is that I think it was 1963, the mayor of the town got a hold of a fellow who was a police officer from Philadelphia to come here and be the police chief. His name was Jim Chamberlain, and I see Rick back there. He sort of knows a little bit about Jim Chamberlain, doesn't you? And Jim started what became a real police department in a way, but then after Jim went and got a different and better job at another town, Glenn Griffin came along, and things were beach traffic was beginning to come in the summer, so they had more than one police officer then. They had three that were essentially like the fire police are today. They were volunteers, but they weren't police. And Neil Murray, her husband, was one of them. So tell us a little about when Neil was an officer, because it was rather humorous at times.
I like to think that my husband was the first policeman in Ocean View, I've been told. But we didn't have any crime. Every once in a while, you'd pick up a drunk or something, and Bill would have to take them to Georgetown because there was no jail thing.
You all hear her okay back there? Okay.
And anyway, he picked up a guy that had been drinking and got him in the back seat, drove to Georgetown, and he was thinking, where's my gun? Which he didn't really need anyway. Come to find out, the pistol was behind the one he was taking to Georgetown. He had been sitting on it. The building past our Baltimore school, Wallace Nelson was one of the policemen, and the night that he died on the street up where Wise grocery store is, Neil was on call, and he was the first one to get there. And he loved being a policeman. He was a policeman in Ocean View until we moved to Millville. And then he became mayor of Millville. He could no longer be a policeman in Oceanville, 2 different towns. I have moved a lot in my lifetime, but I have never, I've never left Sussex County, and anyway, is that a good story?
Yep. And I'll tell you another story that Neil, this is a true story because it was Neil himself that told me. The first day that he was in the police car working, the state police called from Georgetown. 936, 1034, code 68. And Neil goes, just a darn minute. If you want me to help you talk English, I just
I think at the time that he was policeman, the only number he knew was 9-100, and that meant that you were stopping to go to the bathroom.
Now, I'm going to ask Lois to tell a little bit about the hardware store because her dad ran the Millville hardware store, and then there later on we had one here in Ocean View that Ralph West ran, but your dad was first, if I recall.
And Wilbur Hopper, Gerald Hopper's dad, they started that, and it did real well. It was the only place you could buy a hammer or nails and any of that kind of equipment. So it was a good life, and we were lucky to stay right in Millville. He could walk home for lunch, and it was a good business.
Yeah.
During World War II, Bruce's father was the air raid warden for the town, and he would go around and make sure people had all the windows covered up and no lights were shining. You all may not realize this, but during World War II, the German U-boats sank more than 100 cargo ships off the coast from Cape Hatteras to Cape Henlopen. So it was a serious time. So I'm going to ask each of you to tell, I know you were really young, but tell what you remember about World War II. And Bruce, do you remember when your dad was doing that? Yeah, so tell about what you remember and then pass it back this way.
Well, he was the warden, so he had a little thing he had to put around his arm, just to show you that he was something, coming up on the door. But everybody knew everybody at that time. And I remember you could hear like planes flying over, and I was, a little kid, and I thought they was probably Germans. I didn't know no different, but my dad, he straightened me out on it. But you could, I guess, see ships. I don't know if they was German ships or not, but some people said it was, and some people said it wasn't. But you could see them offshore. And I don't know for sure, never did find out for sure if it was or wasn't. But that's basically all I remember as a kid.
Yes. Lois, tell us about your dad's his hardware store, and then what you remember, if you remember anything about World War II.
Before my time, that I remember stuff.
I don't remember anything from.
Yeah, but how about the hardware store?
Oh, the hardware store, there was no other place that you could buy the things that were in his store. And when I look at some of the things I have now, he sold Christmas tree balls. They were the same names that you see today, and they had the price tag, 59 cents. And some of the other things that, and I'd have to go dust. And I did not like that job. The dust, and how do you dust nails and bolts?
Not easy.
And then I got a dime on that, but, it was a good store, and Dad had it for a long time. He went to work at 7:30 in the morning and got home at 6. So it was a long day. The only day they were closed was Sundays. And, I was always proud that my dad had that store and it ended up the way it did.
Yvonne, tell if you remember anything about that era, and tell what your mom and dad did for a living and what it was like growing up in the house with your mom and dad.
About the war,
Hold the mic up there where they.
I remember, Mom and Dad, the towers down on Sand. We would go down there at night and Dad would be the one that would watch for the ships. And, I know that when the war got over, I was 6 years old and Mom gave us, some pans, Bernice and I, some pots and pans and wooden spoons, and we went out on Central Avenue and made noise because we were happy that it was over. And during the war, we had to have stamps, ration stamps, to get food. And my dad had one, Mom had one, Bernice had one, and I had one. And you could only go certain times to use these stamps. And I still have our books with the stamps in it. And it wasn't a good time, but we were glad when it got over and moved on.
I remember when these concrete towers, when they used them, there would be boys up in them, and they all had binoculars, so they told us, and they was checking the ocean all the time. Our ships out here that was supposed to be out here. I remember that as a kid.
Well,
Hold it up to you.
I'm
I'll hold it for you.
what I don't like is my voice.
Well, they're not gonna hear you if you know to use
Not like your voice now.
I know. They were talking, my sister was also down Cedar Neck. I don't know exactly where it was, but there was a wooden tower. And we had different people volunteered to go and be in that and watch for planes and things. So Mom, Dad would take the two of us when we had, and our shift was always at nighttime. And we would be down there while they were looking, and we were trying to sleep, but sometimes the mosquitoes were so bad. But that was a scary thing. And then all the cars during that time had to have their headlights half painted with black. And we still would go to Ocean City, but not as many people went because it was a scary time. And but that way the cars weren't seen as bad as they would have been if the paint wasn't on there. So.
And not to dwell on the terribly negative, but this is how serious it was. There were bodies from the ships that got sunk that would wash up on the beach between Ocean City and up toward Cape Henlopen. And believe it or not, there was a prisoner of war camp right here behind Bear Trap down Muddy Neck. And when the war was over, a lot of those prisoners did not want to go back because they didn't want to be in the area where the Russians were and all. So that camp became a displaced person camp and kept operating up until in the 50s, I think, till those people could find a place to be sponsored and go live. But Ocean View only had a population of about 300 and some in those days. And it was scary for the folks. I've heard my grandfather talk about it a lot. And Ray and Mr. Lynch, what was Mr. Lynch's first name? Russell Lynch?
Yeah.
They would talk about when he was in World War I in the Battle of the Argonne Forest, and they would be talking about how scary that was and how scary World War II was. And that has an influence on folks like this growing up in the shadow of that as children. So we'll say enough about that, unless you,
He had 3 ships blew out from under him.
say that again?
What you just said?
Mr. Lynch?
Right, he had 3 ships blew out. He was climbing up to get aboard them, you know, because the one before him got blew out, and he goes to another, thought he got up on the 4th ship.
Oh, wow.
So, life had its heavy hand at Ocean View as well. Somebody back there have a question?
Yeah, while you mentioned Wallace Nelson, and just go back just a second, it should be noted that he died in the line of duty.
Yes,
And
he does.
and his name is engraved on the National
Yes.
Law Enforcement Memorial in DC.
I knew I didn't want to talk too much, but since you brought that up, I would like to tell you, Wallace was chasing a car up into Millville, and he got it stopped, but then he had a heart attack. And when he died back in those days, they didn't have workers' comp, and they didn't have all the ceremonial stuff that we have today. And when Ken McLaughlin came to town as the chief of police, he called me up and he said, I heard rumors that Ocean View had a policeman that died in the line of duty. And he said, I heard he got hit by a dump truck. And I said, no, that's not what happened. And he said, well, could I ask you to be the chairman of a committee to reopen that case and get his name on the wall in Washington, D.C.? So we had to get Dr. Tobin, the chief medical examiner for Delaware, to open the case. And it took many years. And thanks to Neil Murray, we interviewed him on tape, and he told the whole story of what happened. And Ralph Banks, who was the fire chief at Millville, and it took like 2.5 years to get it done, but we actually, in the year 2002, started the thing, and by 2004, we were invited to a ceremony in Washington, D.C., where they unveiled his name, and that's the reason that the big town hall, where the town hall works now, the police department is called the Wallace A. Nelson Municipal Building. His honor. I thought of something I meant to say at the very beginning to illustrate the big difference. In 1980, and most of you can remember 1980, the population of all of the entirety of Sussex County was between 58 to 62,000 people. That's it for the whole county. And Ocean View had a population of about 380. Today, we have about 300,000 people in Sussex County. So from 1984 up till now, we have witnessed an explosion. And there's a few of us native Sussex Countyans that are starting to sympathize with what the Indians went through. Because we are a minority in our own land now. And by the way, all this thing of World War II, it just dawned on me, we've got a World War II hero sitting right here, Bill Cobb, who... Bill, would you like to say anything about your wartime experience?
Not really.
Okay. But his daughter was one of the girls I thought was pretty wonderful. Back in school days. Well, I didn't mean to talk about myself again. I want each of you to tell how you met your husbands and what it was like raising a family in Ocean View when you had children. Here, again, I have to hold this one.
Well, my next door neighbors was, my sister mentioned her good friend, Connie. Well, the Mitchell family was my neighbors. They were also really good friends of my to-be husband's family, Dave and Leonore Murray. So quite often, Grant and the brother Neil were at Willis Mitchell's home. Well, in the fall one year, I was out helping my dad. He was digging sweet potatoes. Well, little Neil, and he was little, and it was cold and his little nose was going, and he looks up at me and he says, "My brother likes you." I looked at him, and I didn't say it, but I said, "Well, he may do, but I don't like him." And I did not begin to like him till I was about 16, because Grant was a solid tease. He never did anything but something to irritate me. And then was 16, the first time I rode in the car with him, we went around a curve up in Millville, and he went fast enough to sling me over. He said, "That's how you get your girl over." I went home that night, and I said to myself, "I'm gonna marry that guy." And I did. We were 18, and wonderful, wonderful life. I had 4 children with him. My 3 daughters are sitting on the front row here. My son, Grant Jr., was not able to come tonight. So with Grant and I, we did really well with 8, my 4 children, their wives, husbands, 8 grandchildren. Now I have 8 greats and 1 great-great-grandmother. And I've been so blessed. Grant passed away in 2004, and he always said, "If something happens to me, you'll be just fine because you have the children." And they've never let me down, and I'm proud as I can be, and I couldn't ask for more.
So how did you and Neil get together? And I think there's something you need to tell everybody about sisters and brothers and generations and stuff. So bring us up to speed.
You probably noticed that Bernice and I are dressed alike. Our mom always dressed us the same. When it was Children's Day or going to school, we always looked like twins. And anyway, Bob's grandparents, Isaac and Anna Long, my mother and Anna lived in New Jersey, and they came to Delaware. And of course, there were 12. My dad had 11 brothers and sisters, and the 2 boys thought the New Jersey girls were really sweet. So Uncle Isaac married one, and my dad married the other one. So sisters married brothers. And then as time went on and we were in high school, I always knew Neil because he was always over teasing Bernice. But anyway, I started thinking that I would like to date him, and we did. We were married in 1959. I graduated from Lord Baltimore School. It was a 12-year school then. And I graduated 57, and I had to wait for Neil to get out of school. He was graduated in 1959. And together, we had a wonderful life. We had 2 daughters and a son. I have Kathy Tripp, who's a beautician. Neil Jr. is working at Wise, and Joanna is whatever is available, she's there to help. And have, how many kids? 3 kids, 6 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren. Soon to be a great-grandmother, Joanna. The state trooper that was here is my grandson, and he and his wife are expecting a baby in August. John's wife, the state trooper, is also a state trooper in Rehoboth. And Joanna, my son-in-law, J.S. Evans, is a state trooper, so I'm well covered. And J.S. is soon going to be retiring. He's been in for 35 years. 33, excuse me. And thank God that he's had a good, safe time.
I do have to tell you, because he is a trooper, she really uses it. She carries his picture in her wallet. I live in Millsboro now, and she came to visit me one day, and I saw the town cop had her pulled over the side of the road, right in front of my house almost. Well, I went out to see what was wrong. Well, that policeman soon told me I had to get back away from the car. Anyway, and.
Oh, I was a gangster.
Yeah. Don't worry, out comes JS's picture.
Just accidentally found it.
Well, Lois, tell us how you and Bruce got together.
I was in the 8th grade and he was in the 10th grade.
Can you hear her okay?
And we started dating and went to a basketball game, and that's where we got together. But anyway, we went together and we've been married 65 years.
Bruce over there is renowned in this area from the business that he built, because many of those fabulous mansions along the beach had all their painting and inner work done by this man. He built an incredible business. So tell us about some of the hobbies that you two had at your property, because, you know, the animals and stuff.
Hey, Lord. We've always had animals of some nature, horses, goats, sheep. What else? Anyway, it was fun to have them, raise them, and a lot of them had babies. And a lot of fun to have little baby groups, monsters, grow up, and everything that way. And we just enjoyed, you know, that type of stuff. And still do, really, as far as that goes. We just haven't had any babies lately.
Your turn.
Well, I'm gonna ask you each to tell me how all the growth has affected you with all the developments and all the people, and tell about like a compare and contrast. Compare Ocean View before all the growth and now, and you know what you think of it. And, you know, let's be nice. Here, I'll hold it.
I can hold it. I
Okay, well, just hold it up where they can hear you.
If you can't hear, hold your hand up. Well, I'm gonna go back a little bit in Bethany Beach. There used to be a bowling alley, and there was a theater at one time as well. And that was our entertainment, to go down to the beach. And as years went along, of course, more people were coming. And I don't really think that I noticed it or that it bothered me as much as when, well, my husband developed Murray's Haven on the way up to Millville, and he was with Crowley Realty. Well, when the traffic got so heavy in the wintertime, he could drive to his office in Bethany in about 10 minutes. Well, as more and more traffic came, it got to be a half hour or longer. And then they put the traffic light up by what was now. He had to come out of Murray's Haven, make a right, and then to the light to get to Bethany Beach, and wondering how. And we were still okay with it, but I moved to Millsboro in 2005. And this is where really the growth. And now when I come down this way, I don't really recognize a lot of things anymore because they've torn buildings down and added more townhomes. And we sometimes call all of you people that have moved in here. It's good to have you, but our thing will say our implants. But it's helped, definitely helped our economy and everything. And things change and we have to go with it, so.
Yvonne, you want to tell us about school and now, then and now?
Well, being a 12-year school, we graduated, Bruce was in my class, as was the historical building was Betty Jean Rickards, Mary Jane McGee and Doug McGee, they're both here tonight. And we did a lot of things together. My class in school was the first class at North Baltimore School that had a football team. That was not a big thing. Basketball was the biggest. But it was back when there was, like I said, there was no crime. So we could walk to school. Mom would let us walk to school or to church or, you know, wherever we needed to go. And a lot of different things. I would say that I don't think it's for the better. I know that people want to be close to the beach and everything, but with the traffic, it's unreal. Now you have to stand in line in the grocery stores before we didn't have to. And just a lot of changes.
Yvonne, tell them who used to clean the school.
Oh, we had a fella that was custodian of Lower Baltimore School. And his name, when I met Ron, he said, "Who was Fred Hudson?" He thought he was a dignitary. And I said, "No, Fred Hudson was custodian of Lower Baltimore School," which kind of shocked a lot of people. But he was the only one lived on Fred Hudson Road. So and also, because of when they got the first ambulance, the blue ambulance at Millville Fire Company. And not one person that drove the ambulance had a clue as to how to save people. And I said to my husband one time, "Well, what do you do if you pick up someone who had a heart attack or something?" He said, "You just drive like hell to get them Lois, tell us the more.
We had a lot of people who volunteered. They volunteered for the ambulance. You know, I was on the ambulance crew for 5 years. My time was from 1 o'clock in the morning till 9. And Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday night. And it was interesting. The thing that was the most difficult was you never knew until you got to the scene what was happening or what had been. But I think we've been blessed in so many ways that we've had volunteers for the fire company, we've had it for the ambulance crews, we've had it, and they've become all part of the community, which has made Ocean be what it is.
There's something else that Lois needs to talk about. She probably isn't thinking of it right now. But to show you how different it was in those days than today, when somebody really got in trouble. Like, for example, there was a kid that got his neck broken in an accident, and he was really, tell about those community fund things that you got going and how they operated and the different things, you know, not necessarily name names of who the people were, but tell about that.
Well, we had different kids would get in an automobile.
You hearing her
accident,
okay back
would
there?
get in, in an automobile accident and be severely hurt. We took care of them. We got them where they needed to be, and it was, some nights it was tough. Like I said, the toughest part is you never knew till you got to the scene what you had to handle. And, a lot of good stories and a lot of bad, but I remember one night it was cold, and we went and picked up the guy and he had passed away. Well, he was long and the back of the ambulance would not close, so his feet were hanging out. I said, you can't have this man going down the road with his feet hanging out. They said, Lois, he's dead. I said, I don't care if he's dead or not, his feet's cold, cover him up. So that's kind of a lot of stories when I come home. I couldn't go to bed and really go to sleep, and there were other nights I was very thankful that I was there.
But tell about the fundraisers and things that you did, to help pay the bills for these folks.
Yeah, we had several. One boy had his neck broke and the expenses were terrible. So I set up different things to do. We had a chicken and dumpling dinner and people sold tickets and people donated, people would donate 2 or 3 chickens or somebody would donate cabbage for coleslaw. And we'd have these dinners and one of the things we made $20,000. So it took a lot of people volunteering, but it was a lot of good events that ended up with. And you still see some of these people that were injured so bad, and now, hey, no good job.
And Bruce, can you tell us a little bit about Floyd McGee and the fundraisers they did, that jamboree kind of thing they did?
Well, young Floyd and old man Floyd, a lot of times work together. And they would set a date and everything, and then they'd get together and try to get their group that played with them a lot. And anytime they could get new people, they was always happy about that. And they put on a very good show. I mean, I don't think you could see no better in Nashville than that boys did. And
They raised funds for the Boy Scouts and several other things, and Floyd Jr. told me that over the course of the tenure that he was involved in it, that they raised more than $250,000. And in those days, $250,000 went a whole lot farther than today.
You had a job to get a ticket.
I know, it was always sold out.
And as soon as somebody said, Floyd's gonna have these shows, tickets were sold. Right?
yeah, and they sold it.
A lot of good local talent.
The old man Floyd, well, the old man Floyd, little Floyd, young Floyd, they both just had great personalities, that's all. They can make you laugh at a funeral, I think. It's awful, that's all. It couldn't be what it was anyway.
Floyd McGee Sr. was a young man when he showed up down here, and my grandfather and their father took him under their wing because he was kind of like an orphan. And they found out he had a talent for working on automobiles, and Mr. Kaufman kind of said, you know what, we're going to help you get a garage. So they started down at Bethany Beach, and he would fix up a car and sell it, and fix up a car and sell it. And much to the shock of everybody around here, he applied to the Studebaker Company to get a franchise and be a Studebaker dealer, and he got it in 1948. And he went to Mr. Kaufman and he said, there's a piece of ground in Millville I want to buy from you. What do you want with that? He said, I want to build a garage there and sell cars. And he said, you can't afford to do no such a mess as that. You let me and my other partner, we'll build it and rent it to you, and then you can buy us out. And he did that up until 1955, and then he moved it to Georgetown, Delaware. And if any of you have ever seen McGee Motor Company in Georgetown, born right here.
What is, garage, wasn't it, where?
If you know where the Belleville Pet Stop is today, that was the Studebaker. It was also a Jeep dealer, and there was some kind of tractor that they don't make anymore. I forget what, it was Farmall or Massey Ferguson or something. But anyway, we're going to eventually get to, in a few minutes, where you can ask questions, because that'll just trigger all kinds of thoughts with these lovely folks. But I want to tell each of you, as a kid growing up, how grateful I am that we lived here in Ocean View with people like you, because we had the Mother's Spy Network here. and we were free-range children. In those days, you could just wander all over everywhere. And I remember, I lived on Woodland, and I remember being over here on West Avenue, hearing a voice coming out of a window. "Bobby Herrington, you get yourself home right now, I'm calling your mom." We couldn't get into that much trouble because everybody knew everybody. And I guarantee you, you could have taken an older lady off of one of these streets and put them in your car and rode all the way up and down all 3 streets and said, "Who lives here? Who lives here? Who lives here?" And it made a safe place. It made a nurturing place. And do you all remember Horace Daisy on Woodland Avenue? We didn't need Mr. Rogers. We had Mr. Daisy. He would always have kids over to the big garage. He had a card catalog system set up for bicycles, and anybody that didn't have a bicycle could check out a bicycle from Mr. Daisy. He held birdhouse raising parties in the spring, and he had Halloween parties taking the birdhouse down, ginger snaps and cider, and he would teach us, this is how to use a phone book. This is how to use an orange squeezer, or whatever that thing was to make orange juice. And I just can't stress enough, as one of the kids growing up here, how loved we all felt. And there was a tragedy in my family when my dad died in 1969, and I would tell people all over everywhere, wherever I was, I grew up really, really poor, and at the same time extraordinarily rich, because most of us in this town, we're really not all that greatly well off, but we were really rich in family, in friends, and in fellowship and safety. So anyway, at this point, I would like to open it up, that if any of you have questions you would like to ask of any of these.
Actually, it's not a question, but we were talking about World War II. A story came to mind. I live in the Salt Pond, where they developed the white breed of a chicken. The dark one, you see the picture there. But the German soldiers were interned, and they worked on the farms. And Eileen Short's house was right in the back fence, and they had a couple of the German interns living upstairs because they were working the chickens there. And they asked that the walls were white, I believe, upstairs. And if I'm not, this is because I'm a transplant and I listen to a lot of the stories still. And if we get some crayons or paints, or could we make some pictures on the wall reminiscent of where we did? And they did. And then eventually those pictures got cut out of the attic area, and you can go to the Sussex County Water Company and their office there, and 2 of them are framed there. And they look like old German pictures, and made them feel more comfortable. And she said they like to stay. A lot of them did stay and married. And now, the other thing was about the custodian. It's not unusual to have a part of a building named after a custodian, whether it's a gym or whatever. because they, custodians were the friends of the kids. And they helped to run a building, because I was an assistant principal for many years, and our custodians ran our buildings. So it was a point of pride that it was named after the custodian.
Well, his wife worked in the cafeteria as well, and there was another custodian, Mr. and Mrs. Hitchens. And I brought an album tonight that has some of the old pictures of the original schoolhouse that I started in, an old brown wooden building, not a pretty place to start school. And that was up through 6th grade, and then we moved over in the 7th grade, but it was Fred Hudson and his wife in the cafeteria. And there's pictures too during wartime where at the schools, the state came in and gave us the vaccinations. We're standing in line with these people with our sleeves up, waiting to be poked. And, that was a scary thing, because nowadays when little children go get a shot, their parents are, and here I am, a 1st grader, and it was kind of scary. And then they sent some type of, supposed to be orange juice. We were supposed to have a little cup of it every day, and it was horrible. It was horrible, and but you kind of was made to drink it, so.
Do most of you in here know about the chicken business and how that a lady here in town started it? Well, that lady was their aunt, and their fathers worked in the business with them, and tragically in 1940, their boat was an inboard engine, gasoline-powered boat, and there was an explosion because gasoline fumes had built up, and they were both killed. And that changed everything with the family, because then, the business changed and all of that sort of thing. But, they themselves helped tend chickens. And Bruce, tell me how many chickens you used to help raise. They'll be fascinated.
Well, we had 3 different places, and we had 20,000 chickens in each place. And they and myself took care of them. And in them days, you fed to feed out of a feed trough into individual feeders. You didn't have push a button and you're going on track. And the feed came in 100 bags.
How the chickens get a drink.
They had a spigot come up, a little spigot come out, and you hook the wire on the lever of that, and the weight of the water regulated the water in the pan all the time. So they had fresh water to drink it all night. Of course, chickens that didn't have nothing else to do, they'd knock that little pan off. If you was not right there, you had wet chicken house, so you didn't have to put stay on there.
Anybody else have a question?
Not a question, but talk about how the chickens drank. Well, they had big crocks.
Yeah,
And I remember this.
I helped that.
Yeah.
We helped.
Yeah.
Your dad
And
did.
you had to hold them and fill them, and the chicken house water was always rusty. And then you had to put the lid on the crock and flip
Flip it
it
over.
real quick.
You done that with
Yeah,
the fish?
yeah, with the biddies, and then there was a little hole where the water came down.
Yeah.
And I wanted you to tell what you used to sing all the time about Ike and Anna. Don't
They
you
don't
know?
want to hear a song that we sang as kids.
Ike and Anna.
We used to sing Ike and Anna go together like a peel and a banana.
I've often heard a rumor that somebody made a mistake and left the lights on in the chicken house, and it made them grow a lot faster. Is that true?
Well,
I don't know if it's true or not, but they did leave them on all the time. And they would, I think they did grow more because they didn't sleep as much. As soon as it comes dark, the chicken goes to sleep. But if it's light, you can go down there to check, and there'll be a few of them moving around most of the time.
Well, Bruce, before we got together to do this, I received a call from a man named Paul Cooper, and he said he wanted you to tell these people how you got such a hole in your hat.
He shot it in my hat. He took it off my head and threw it up the iron shower.
And you still kept wearing it.
I did, I kept running, I told everybody else that asked me about it, Paul Cooper done.
Yes, there's,
Out of curiosity, how did Ocean View get its name?
supposedly, back then, all the tree line between here and Bethany hadn't grown up that much, and somebody climbed on top of the original Hall store and said, hey, I can see the ocean from here.
That's
Now,
what I've
that,
heard, too.
And Bethel Davidson always told that story.
yeah, now, I wasn't around to know if that's true, but these folks know people who said that's what it was.
They had, did they cut the forest for fields and then let the fields grow up again? Is that what happened?
Yeah, and eventually the tree line grew up.
I'd like to ask the panel what their memories are of the storm of '62.
Oh, my. I'll get to you there. Okay. Who wants to start talking about the storm of '62?
It started raining and raining and raining, and the water came from the canal in Ocean View. It came down 26 toward Bethany Beach. And then it was coming, we could sit in our house, and normally, if you're on the boardwalk, you look down to see the water. You did not. We looked out our window, and the ocean was like this, just rolling. And then he saw it take the bathhouse down, picked it right up and just blew it apart. It
Well, it was just rolling.
And we had water in our house. We lived right on Kent, we lived on Kent Road, which is on 26 too. And we had water just above our baseboard heat inside. People still don't believe it. But we'd see the fire engine come down and we'd see the water coming up and then you couldn't see their headlights at all. That's how deep it was. He carried, we had one child was almost a year old. He carried him out on his back, and I carried a bag of stuff, whatever I could grab for Bruce Ray. It was not a good sight, and it's never done it again. So.
Talking about their house, Neil was a volunteer at the fire company, and they took a boat or canoe or something and went down to Bruce and Lois's and brought them back up 26 in a boat.
And I can add a little something. I live on Woodland Avenue, and we had to leave because it flooded there as well. Uncle Horace's house on Central, the land's a little higher, and we had to spend the night over at Uncle Horace's. But there's a creek behind, and the water is tidal, and that's where it all came from. There was a gentleman back here.
Yeah, you mentioned moonshine on Quillen's Point. I was just interested in what it was like when these ladies were youngsters at Quillen's Point, and also the VFW. I mean, was that just barren land where kids played? What was it like then?
Okay.
It was just a beach like down there, and a lot of nights after dinner, our parents would take us down there, and we would play in the small amount of sand there was, and water, and our dad would crab or go clamming or something while we were there. And that was a fun place to go too. So, we used to also pick up beach plums along the beach highway. And then on the right-hand side, headed towards Fenwick, we could pick cranberries there too then. You know, that was a lot of our fun stuff too.
Yeah, I'm not sure what year that they built the VFW down there, but there was no VFW in those days. And can you, I'm gonna come back to you, but I got one thing I'm gonna say. Can you imagine Bear Trap not being there and that being strawberry fields?
I saw it spring that bridge collapse. What year was that? What caused it to collapse?
1948. No, there was a lot of ice flows coming through, and my grandfather, Ike Long, was one of the bridge tenders, and he had just gone off duty, and was it Boyer Hawker that came on?
Yeah.
And that's when the bridge fell in. Oh, that brings up an interesting patronage story, political patronage. In those days, when the Democrats won, the Republicans were out of a job. And when the Republicans won, the Democrats were out of a job. So my Uncle Dan and my grandfather had a great scheme. Uncle Dan registered as a Democrat and my grandfather a Republican. And when the Republicans were in, my grandfather was a bridge tender. There were multiple bridge tenders. And then when the Democrats were in, Uncle Dan was a bridge tender. And then they formed conversely. There was somebody over here who had a question.
When I was a child, of course, I wasn't raised here, I was born and raised in South, but we used to come down here, you had lights at Lord Baltimore School, and you had a ball diamond, and we had one behind the South Fire Company. And we, the men, well, the older boys, because I was about 8 or 9, we would come down here and play, they would play your boys at the ball diamond at Lord Baltimore School. Do you remember that?
The red cones. Yeah.
I don't even know their names.
Yeah, it was a red cone.
I do know that we won the pennant in 1949.
Might have been the only time.
Bruce brought up an interesting thing about his hat being shot. Back when my husband Neil and Wallace Nelson were policemen, they had one pistol and one bullet. And Neil would be on duty, he had the bullet and pistol, and then it would go to Wallace. Well, Wallace he was on call, and Wallace smoked a pipe, and he kept the tobacco in his shirt pocket. So he packed it up by the traffic light in Dyksboro, packed his tobacco in the pipe, put it in his mouth, lit it, and the bullet was in the pipe. And it shot through, and he shot his hat off. And
That's what I say, it was a different story. Out of respect to all the state troopers, I don't think they had internal affairs. And you know, what happened here stayed here. There was somebody else, oh yeah.
I have a friend who lives in Selbyville, and she told me that she used to come over and play miniature golf, like up where Salt Pond is, and it was a grass miniature golf. How long ago was that?
No, it was Bobby. It was when they built the salt pond, right before the grocery store.
You remember what year that was?
90s. Yeah, it was in the late 80s, early 90s.
It was where the G&E restaurant was.
There was a big chicken farm there that was a layout, but all the locals said land farm. Remember that?
There was 2 big
You don't like how West
I remember when I was a kid riding on a bicycle that it was there, so that would have been sometime in what, the 60s? Late 50s?
I remember when they done it.
Yeah, somewhere in the late 50s. And by the way, can you believe that I was the ring bearer in their wedding? 1959. And I think there's a picture of me up there somewhere. Anybody else have a question? I have a question. Oh, there's a gentleman there.
Has the bay ever frozen slowly and quickly across?
Sure has. Ray Dolby told me that it froze so solidly on the Assawoman Bay that you could drive a Model T all the way over to Oak Orchard and it wouldn't fall through. It was that frozen. And the Delaware Bay out here across froze all the way over in what, 1976, I think it
I
was.
don't know, but the ocean froze that.
Yeah, the ocean froze.
Well, the ocean froze, the water would just be like that, would be in a wave.
Well, I have one question, and then I will turn it back over to the president of the Historical Society. How many of you in here are related to me?
I have no idea.
Well, thank you all for coming. It's certainly been a lot of fun. Did you have something?
Well, there's been a lot of talk, but not a whole lot about Lord Baltimore. And I think if you think about Lord Baltimore, does anyone remember the name Cleo McCann?
Oh, yeah. She was the school nurse when my mother went there, and she was the school nurse when I went there.
And me too, me too.
Somebody else have a comment? Yes, sir.
Bob, I'd like to add a piece of information on Ocean View.
Okay, I'm
I
gonna give
grew
you.
up here, and I know you, but you don't remember me. Jack Hill.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for buying.
Your mom was one of the women that kept me from being in jail.
I think you're buying my hat and keeping my dad's store going. But my parents, of course, grew up here, and where the hair salon is on Central Avenue was my father's grocery store. But prior to that, there was a hotel that stood there.
Oh, wow.
And it was the Rufus Adkins Hotel. And it was built to house the people that hand dug the Assawoman Canal. And after the canal was finished, they had no use for the hotel. My grandfather bought the place and started a grocery store there. My father bought it from him. And that's the original building. The hotel burned down in 1941. And then my father built back again. So it's an interesting piece of information.
And Miss Roxy was an amazing lady who really was just fantastic. Your mom.
I'm another one of those hill children, and I grew up on the corner of Central and Daisy down here, and the store that Jack, my brother, was just speaking about, my grandfather sold it to my dad, and he had a bill of sale, what was it, $200? $200. And my dad kept the store there until the early 50s, when all of the supermarkets began to come through. But growing up in Ocean View and my father having a store, I knew everybody in town. And there was no TV, no air conditioning, so people sat on their front porch after dinner at night. And I would ride my bike up Central Avenue, and hi, Mrs. Burton, hi, Mr. Frank, you know, whatever. I knew everybody in town. So one thing about it, in 41, when the store burned, the people in the community all gathered. They helped to clean up the mess and to dig a basement for the building that now stands there. So it was a wonderful place to grow up.
Yes, indeed. And it just illustrates how the people pulled together really well in those days. Yeah, neighbors helping neighbors.
Well, I want to thank you all.
Unless there's anybody else, we'll turn it over to Margaret.
I think we all learned something tonight. I think we all have things to share with other people. I think we all are proud to be Ocean View or their nearby residents there. So thank you so much for coming. And if you have any questions about the Historical Society, I'll stand up here and answer them. So, thank you.
There's one more thing I just thought of. How many of you, do any of you live in Bearcat? Okay, then we don't need to tell them.
Guess we'll leave that for next time. All right, thank you again for coming.